SBOM. We started in this space a long time ago. This was all hypothetical. This was Duncan with his little blinky boxes, which I forgot to bring up with me blinking right here, and saying, hey, these are the type of things you can do. Now we're going to talk about what people really are doing. Going to cover a lot of speakers, covering a lot of topics in the next hour. Start out with me with a little bit of the ground rules. One of the ground rules is we're going to have a bunch of vendors up here telling you, hey, we really do this stuff now. It works really great. I've requested of them that our theme is an incoming tide raises all boats. You can talk about how great you're doing. You can't talk about what crap that your competitors do. Okay, you could be better. Show how you're better. Don't talk down others. We really want to bring the community up. Another of the ground rules is we're going to be fast. Each one of these is going to be restricted to 5 minutes. And then we'll still have 5 minutes for Q&A. If we can shave a few minutes off, we'll have a little bit more for Q&A. Save all questions for the end, because like on the last one, we might not have time to get through everything we'd like to. I think that's all my ground rules. First up is myself. So again, I'm just an old retired guy who writes software for a living. I'm that, guy in Nebraska that's a little peg in some of the open source software or whatever. If anybody uses my software, shame on them. But most of my software has been in the development of this automation space to be reference models, to be stuff that works, stuff like the game that hopefully you're all playing in the background. I'm boring and talking. You guys should be playing the game. Let's try and get those scores up. I showed the blinky box yesterday. I meant to carry it up with me so it would be blinking here. It does actually implement OpenC2 commands that will control it. It's over MQTT. In previous versions of this village, we did the 3.0 version and older version of OpenC2. I will say the version I have now is upgraded to MQTT5. It still doesn't have the new OpenC2 stuff in it, and it still has a bug or two, which is why I wasn't live on yesterday's demo. But you can pretend yesterday, there it is actually blinking, that at some point in time when Dave Lemire hit his return, it turned red because the thing didn't work, or it turned purple. That's a video of it actually working live as controlled by OpenC2 command. So you can pretend I just did that. But in addition to making the Raspberry Pi version, we made a web-based version. So it's Blinky Maha for the ha part is the hello world. The Ma is for MQTT, and the Twinkly, as opposed to a Blinky, is just, hey, here's a web version. You can hit a little button on it and the link to get there, and we'll turn the LED on. And usually when we give this demos live, everyone goes to the link and screws up my demo because they turn it on and the next guy turns it on and it's screwed up. But again, there's a controller that sends it, and again, my machine can talk to the HI machine, some of the other machines, and their machines can talk to mine. So we do have working proof that this stuff works. But what's all this have to do with SBOM? Well, one of the both on the Twinkly and on the Blinky, they actually have actual SBOM. So the people who are going to be talking after me, if they felt like it, and I think a couple of them are going to, they can tear me to shreds because I'm not very good at doing this. But it does as part of the development process. I just press the right button and SBOMs appear. And in the case of the web version, I go ahead and put them in, not well known /SBOM, which is a space where you're supposed to put SBOMs. We got it for the Docker thing that it runs in also. So that's the real quick version of this. I am now going to stop sharing, or actually I'm going to go back up to the agenda and then stop sharing. And I'm going to turn it over to Thomas Schmidt of BSI, who was Justin had just referred to, who besides being Justin's counterpart in the German equivalent to CISA, is also developing software and tools, one of which Justin demonstrated. And I'm going to turn it over to him and start his 5-minute clock 4 minutes early from our scheduled time. So hopefully we can free up a little time for everybody else. With that, I will stop sharing. Thomas, you can start sharing.
Thank you. And as should you see my screen? Correct?
Yes, we're seeing it, Thomas.
Cool. So instead of showing you a lot of tools and how they work, I want to give you a little bit of overall perspective, what we're trying to achieve. So usually, and Justin has had part of that in his presentation, so I'll try to go over this as quick as I can. usually what we see our critical infrastructure, and not only them, but also all other infrastructure struggling with, is retrieving advisories and comparing them with the asset database. And then the decision part, let alone that, there are methods for that, but it's really a problem of executing the first two steps. Since people are confronted with all that different web pages and all that different advisories, and when they get them, they then have to read through them to actually find out whether they affected. And this is where CSAF comes in with the tools, and every little yellow box that you see here is a standardized tool in CSAF. So there's something called a CSAF asset matching system, where you have a CSAF file, a security advisory or VEX or anything else, and you match that against your existing asset management system, where you have all the devices and all the software that you have. And BSI is currently working on an open source implementation of that. The custom downloader, that's already reference implementation out there, and we can all actually automate anything except for the user act stuff. But you will hear a lot of people and have heard a lot of presentations during the last few days how this can be automated. But then the question is, where do I get the CSAF files from? And there's infrastructure built around it with CSAF providers and CSAF trusted providers and CSAF aggregators. And actually BSI is running one of a CSAF aggregator which collects CSAF files and presents them in a way that you can automatically retrieve them. So now the question is, what about a vendor perspective? So this is a usual vendor circle, and we actually support that in CSAF with two sets of tools. A content management system, which actually you have seen SecVisogram in Justin's presentation. There's also a backend for it, so that you can have a multi-user workflow behind it, and can have your PCert writing something, and then your subject matter experts on the product checking what they have written, and that kind of workflow, and then getting things published on a CSAF trusted provider. That is also software that is publicly available open source. And if you put that all together and look at a supply chain view, you take your security advisories and VEXs from your supplier, download them. And now instead of matching them against an asset database, you match them against your SBOMs. And there is actually a cool project out by Red Hat, or they are supporting it. It's called Trustification. This is doing the part for SPDX, as well as there's currently a public funded project to implement that matching in dependency track. So, and then once you know what you need to look at, you evaluate the vulnerabilities and see what is actually things that I have to talk about publicly and with my customers. And then you enact your CSAF content management system, take the information through the process of writing an advisory or VEX and publish that. So all those tools are basically out there to do the process and interact with the process. So how does it look from a greater ecosystem perspective? So we have a user, and it can either go to a CSAF lister, so which is more or less a telephone book of people that provide CSAF documents in an automated fashion, and then pull directly from the source, so no delay in getting the latest available information. Or they can directly pull from an aggregator, and BSI is running one of them. And then they also get information that is currently not
I'm gonna have to ask you to finish up. We're getting out of time.
Automatically retrieval. And that was basically my last sentence. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I should have waited. Alrighty. Thank you much, Thomas. If you could stop sharing, and Kyle, you can start sharing, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I need to go to preferences. Sorry, my preparation was not quite as good as it should have been. My company is Signal.FYI, and I'm actually in the middle of building out features where through a GitHub marketplace app where it's actually tracking container versioning through pull requests. It runs daily, so it's opening a pull request every day against your pull or your repo and maintaining the version for you. Really, the goal behind this one is to add context to this SBOM or add metadata to your SBOM context. So essentially, what we're doing is we're positioning you to actually have auditability on your Docker containers. So essentially, you're getting versioning information that you don't usually get for your containers from your source code. We're looking actually to extend this a little bit further to actually make it adaptable to CVEs that are currently open. So sorry about my demo is not quite where it should have been. I apologize. But actually,
Is it the Zoom sharing that's
yeah, but it's on my end.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to cut it there. I apologize. Give y'all some time back.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. And while you're handing that to John, if you want, you can put a link to the chat or whatever to your stuff. And if you want to give me slides to either, and by the way, all presenters send your slides to either of the two James, Jane and Jane Harder, because we are collecting them all for everybody afterwards. And I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? No. That's your door?
Yeah. Just move the mic up.
Move it up and also hit the button so we're ready.
You want to put it on your collar.
Just lost the connection.
Okay, can you hear me now? Cool. All right, I'm John Cavanaugh from IIS, talking about ProCat. Because we only have a few minutes, I'm going to actually do a live demo. So you're seeing our AWS instance. We develop and then we push through Azure to both all three clouds, right? Google, Amazon, and AWS. What you're seeing here is live. We have two major modules, a requirements module and an admin module. So I'm going to just briefly touch upon this. So what I put in is a PDF, and I'm going to open this up. Can you see it? Okay. So you'll get a copy of this. It's already in G's inbox. I'm going to skip over the OSS and cover that and other things. This is a game changer, right? We talked about some paradigm shifting. So today we have existing infrastructure and various vendors. I could have put ServiceNow in here as well. Yesterday we talked about threat activity, right? Six, Kestrel, and Cacao. What we're doing over here are basically four areas of focus or profits. In the middle here, the circle, this is a knowledge graph. And we talked yesterday about one type, this is a properties graph. And what we see from all of our experiences, down here there's a user session provenance or infrastructure, right? You're developing an application for a particular infrastructure, cloud-based, web-based, on-prem. Here are controls. We all have controls we have to meet. And here are requirements. We talk about DevSecOps. I'm going to change that now because I can't. You'll get it later. And then I'm going to show you now in a live demo what the code provenance is, right? DevSecOps, but with MLOps and traditional DevSecOps, I'm renaming that to BizSecOps because business now has to be involved. This is what we're going to see, and I'm going to end this here. and go back to the live demo. Okay, so we're gonna now jump into the application. So what we have here, if you're doing your own development, we have an evaluation platform, dev, and then we have our pre-prod and prod. In this example, you see ProCap, which is our product, and you see both the version history, an SBOM score, and the reason that you're seeing 74 components with one vulnerability but 100% score is because we've applied a VEX to this, right? So because we're developing ourselves, these are known CVEs, and then the one that was analyzed and not, well, it was actually not included, that's the one that is here. And you can see that as we develop over time, we had various scores. The other application would be the game. So we did import the game JSON file. And you can see I have 44 components.
I'm shocked that I got 100%.
One of the things that we are also looking at are licenses, right, and known unknowns. So known unknowns come from the anti-IA spec, and we can very quickly see which packages are missing certain things. Okay.
So I didn't really get 100%.
So one of the other things that we do is
1 minute.
we can show the scoring of SBOMs, and what we're patenting is release bill of materials. That'll be the additional components that an application is used to deploy with. Quality gates, you can set what scores you want to pass. Continuous monitoring, we can set this up and users can set whatever time interval they want, and we keep pulling in new CVEs and constantly scoring. So the last thing I'll close with is, this is evolving. I need your help, and I want to help you. So the open standards are one thing, but to get this actually into production, we need people to test it, work with us, and expand. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Shut that off. Did you shut off your share? Once he stops sharing, then Interlynk will be up next remotely. Are you on and ready to go? You are. You're starting to share. That's great. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Yes.
All right. Firstly, I'd like to thank for the opportunity to discuss Interlynk with all of you today. Good morning to everyone, and I hope you're having a great day. So let's dive in. I'm Ritesh Noronha. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Interlynk. So I've been working in Silicon Valley for the last 2 decades, and I've been working in various capacities as an individual contributor, and my final gig was a VP of engineering before we started off Interlynk. I've worked in enterprises as well as startup environments, and I had tremendous fun along the way. All right, so just to give you a brief introduction about Interlynk, so we were founded in September of 2022. What we are building is a complete SBOM and VEX exchange and management platform. We manage the entire life cycle of an SBOM, right from the build stages to the deploy and exchange stages. We understand the importance of what an SBOM and VEX is for an organization. So we build processes and automation around them to ease the operator workflow. And essentially, that is what sets it apart, is how easy it is to have customized workflows in our software. But for today, I'm not going to be focusing on our commercial platform, but more on the open source initiatives that we have been building on from the day we started. One of the early insights that we had once we started delving into SBOMs is the quality of the SBOMs is all over the place, at least in 2022 when we started. Obviously, being an engineer, let's build a new generator, right? So it took a lot of effort to say that, no, that's not what we want to do, because there are very good generators out there. But we wanted to address the pain points as to, since we are a consumption platform, we wanted data consistency, at least for the required areas. So that's what got us down into building a quality scoring tool called SBOM QS. It's an open source Apache 2 license. Anybody can use it. We launched it in 2023. Essentially what it does, it gives you a good glimpse into an SBOM to see how operationalizable it is. If a score is below 8, that means that you'll have to do a lot of work to operationalize it. Our thesis when we built this tool was to say that, hey, if we can give this to the open source SBOM generator, people building generators, it can help improve the quality of the SBOMs. So what we saw is, as soon as we released the tool, we saw adoption from some pretty big names out there in the SBOM generator space. ORT uses it to regularly check for how they output the SPDX and CycloneDX SBOMs. Very recently, CPython used it for their SBOM generation. And obviously GitHub, when they were developing their SPDX generator, they also use SBOM, and they've credited us on their website. So that's a couple of this, but when we didn't know this, but we saw that commercial companies like Harness.io, which is a CI/CD pipeline, they have integrated us. And I think so the integration is very, it's exactly what we wanted it to be. And it's very similar to our commercial offerings. So this is a CI/CD pipeline. This is their UI. As they build out their software, they generate an SBOM, and right next to that, they present the score. Now, this is the scoring by SBOM QS. Any score above 8 is more or less a very operationalizable SBOM, right? You have to do less work to get it. You have to do less work to get it more operationalizable. They also went next level to present the breakdowns. How are these scores break down? So these are for the NTI minimum element requirements. This is how it scores. And you'll know exactly what you need to address. Now, SBOM QS doesn't check for accuracy. It just checks for presence. So there are platforms that need to build out to make sure that this data is accurate. But this is just the first step. All right, so for a more practical example, this is Twinkie Maha was an SBOM shared by Duncan to check how the quality scoring looks like. And you can see initially, so depending on the hat that you wear, you can see very clearly that if you're a GRC or a compliance person, you see that, okay, the licenses looks decent. You probably have 4 components have missing licenses, easy to fix, right? While if you're looking for NTI minimum elements, you see that, oh, the suppliers are completely missing out here, while the components have lack unique IDs. So this gives you a quick glimpse into what SBOM QS can do for you. I think so. I'm going to stop there, as that's the only time I have. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. And I told them all to tear me apart on my code, because I knew it wasn't very good. And next up is going to be Netrise, which will also be a remote. So Derek is starting to share. Derek, it's all yours.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Duncan. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. So real quick, yes. Derek McCarthy here. I run field engineering at Netrise. So I'll try to get through this pretty quick. I won't bore you with too many slides, and then hopefully get into a bit of a high-level demo. So just a quick 10,000-foot view of what we do at Netrise. So we have a binary analysis and supply chain risk management platform. We analyze everything from firmware binaries, bare metal, real-time operating systems, embedded Linux, to things like cloud containers, full Linux gold images, operating system images. And we generate SBOMs from the binary, as well as all sorts of other risk that is related to the supply chain that doesn't necessarily fall under the umbrella of software bill of materials, which is, one of the things that I'm going to focus on talking about today. Perhaps really just to, talk about something else outside of, just software bill of materials. So when we talk about how we're generating SBOMs, one of the things that we stress at Netrise for what is the advantage of the approach that we take to generating SBOMs from a binary as opposed to other approaches that may exist further left in the development pipeline? One of the key advantages is the accuracy and efficacy of the SBOM itself, right? There's so much that happens during the development process, during the build and compilation process, that very often changes the software components that end up in that final artifact, that final firmware binary or container, or whatever that artifact might be, that really the way we see it, the best way to get the most accurate look of what is actually running on a device, what is shipping to a customer, is to conduct binary analysis and generate an SBOM. Contrary to what I think we've heard a lot in the industry of shifting left, would actually be shifting right, and generating the SBOM, on that final artifact. Another kind of clear, obvious advantage to doing binary analysis, and frankly, one that asset owners, people that are using devices, not necessarily vendors or developers of software, but as well as when you look at something like the automotive space, there's a very complex supply chain where they have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, and they may not control all of the source code that goes into that final vehicle in that case, or whatever you're building. So, conducting binary analysis allows you to generate software bills of material when you don't control the source code. Again, whether that's because you're an asset owner, and it really takes the onus off of relying on the vendor in that case to get an accurate picture of the software supply chain that you have. And then, back to my original point that I mentioned around, our platform SBOM is a primary use case, but it's really just one facet of what we do. Conducting binary analysis allows us to identify all sorts of other supply chain risks that fall outside of that umbrella of software components and CVEs. So what does that look like, right? It's things like, cryptographic issues with public keys, private keys, and certificates, hard-coded credentials or weak passwords, things like device misconfigurations, and all of these other artifacts that, again, you don't really have the opportunity to glean those details, if you're generating SBOMs.
1 minute warning.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks. So in the last 60 seconds, I'll just give you guys kind of a quick walkthrough of what the platform looks like. If we take a look at any of these reports, again, we rip apart a binary. SBOM is, again, a key facet of what we do, the ability to analyze a binary, generate all of these software components. We support industry standard formats as everybody would expect. You have the ability to remediate vulnerabilities, generate a VEX document. We can ingest software bills and materials as well. But as you guys see, which we certainly don't have time to go through, there's all sorts of other risk-related and software supply chain-related information that we can glean out of these binaries to really allow you to get that full picture of what the risk of this device looks like as a whole, outside of just the software components and CVEs. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody, for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. If you could stop sharing, next will be in the room. Manifest is up next. I'll get him mic'd and connected.
Screen is on. Can you all hear me? All right, can everyone online hear me? Oh, great. All right, good almost afternoon, everyone. My name is Bardenstein. I'm the CTO and co-founder of a company called Manifest that I have 5 minutes or less to tell you all about. We're going to take a slightly different approach. We're all going to see platforms look fairly similar, so I'm going to try to leave you all with 3 key takeaways about us, and then feel free to come find me afterwards. So let's see if this actually moves. There we go. So we are SBOM/BOM. I'll get to why the S in parentheses, powered security platform. We handle various types of use cases, which we'll get to, but at the end of the day, as we all know, SBOMs are a piece of data. Data in and of themselves don't provide security value. It's what you do with the data that actually leads to important security outcomes. So let's jump right in. Takeaway 1, we handle and automate SBOM use cases around the world. So we work with government, healthcare, finance, automotive, defense, big tech. Given that we're a Paraton seems relevant to mention, pursued better high to get into some of these more interesting use cases across defense and government. And I think everyone in this room knows that SBOM, software supply chain VEX, this is a global phenomenon. We all know Cyber Resilience Act, NIS2, et cetera, happening in Europe. So let's dive into the specific use cases that we handle in production at our customers around the world. First, as we all know, helping research teams and development teams build code securely. So we can automate the generation of SBOMs in CI/CD pipelines. We can do this across the SDLC at build time, at runtime, et cetera. We can handle legacy devices. We can support up to more than 30 languages. We handle the storage, the scanning, licenses, integrations, and we help organizations generate inventories of all the open source software they have across their enterprise, first and third party. Ultimately, we're helping research teams make it easy and automated to make sure their developers are shipping secure code before it gets to production. Second use case, responding to vulnerabilities. Hopefully this will be short. This is Log4j. Log4Shell response. I was at the Pentagon when this happened. My co-founder was at Palo Alto Networks. Both are ostensibly sophisticated organizations, resorted to emails, phone calls, and Excel spreadsheets. And if you don't know what happened, this was the tool that I wish I had. It's a search away, it's an email away, it's automatic. Third use case, compliance and secure sharing. We do this a lot with highly regulated customers in defense and device manufacturers that deal with their respective regulations. How do we take it from a multi-day exercise when our DoD customer component asks us for SBOM or Seadrill or whatever it is into several clicks, right? What product, what version do they have of that product? What are all the artifacts that went into that product, whether they're containers or other, more legacy artifacts? What are all the components in those things? What are all the vulnerabilities in those things? How do we triage those vulnerabilities so we don't have to justify them to government? And then how do we securely share that in a way that it's not email and not just JSON? Because now once you share your JSON, you just kick the can down the road. Now someone on the FDA side or your customer or the DoD now has a piece of JSON that they have to deal with, and no one likes to look at JSON. And fourth, I think this is one of the key use cases for SBOMs that I feel is often slept on in a lot of circles or communities, vendor risk management. I think this is probably a community that thinks more about this. We help our customers automate how do you get SBOMs from your vendors, right? It's complementary approach from the binary analysis approach where you can get stuff, you don't have source code, there's a high degree of variability. We believe strongest SBOMs are coming from source customers, and unless you want to designate one of your key DRM folks half of their time just to email back and forth with all your vendors, oh, that's not the right format, oh, this is a good SBOM, got JSON flying back and forth. How do you automate this through a secure portal? Your vendors can upload SBOMs in an easy way. They come automatically to tenant, get scanned, etc. We also have some cool work that come talk to me later about doing behavioral analysis on suppliers long term. Takeaway number 2, we handle the entirety of the SBOM lifecycle. Oh, always goes by quick. We're already covered from a lot of use cases that you can tell. In this industry, there's a lot of point solutions, focusing on generation, finance, etc. We try to handle the whole thing. I'll spend my last time talking about this. We're leading the charge on AI bills of material. It sounds like taking 2 buzzwords and squishing them together, but it sounds like there's a lot of push and momentum around this around the world. We have a publicly available wiki and white paper and community around this. I have an ABOM generator that I've been doing some testing on open source models and working with beta partners on how to generate ABOMs automatically the same way we generate SBOMs automatically, because otherwise someone's going to have to write a bunch of JSON or mount cards. And we're starting to build in what these AI bombs look like in a human readable way and help people, again, operationalize bombs for security use cases. Come find me for real SBOM afterwards, and here's some QR codes to stay QR codes to stay in touch. Thank you for your time.
Timed it perfectly. Timed it perfectly. Thank you. Next up is Tidelift. Ricardo. Company.
Can you guys hear me? Let me share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ricardo Reyes. I'm with Tidelift. We're a company that basically partners with maintainers, open source projects, maintainers, and we collect data, intelligence from their projects, and we make that data available to our customers. And we work with every supplier, customer out there. We work with industry, government, and I would say a lot of healthcare as well. And one of the challenges that we're seeing across the ecosystem desktop is the quality of desktop. And also, how do you remediate issues that surface from those projects that are generating SBOMs? And part of this is working communities like myself, this is as working groups. We address that conversation all the time, but we haven't really solved that problem. So we'll cover one use case. We're seeing across the government. We have a contract right now with DoD where they have containers, thousands of containers, and they're doing board requests every day. They want to identify the threat on those container users from their suppliers. They have multiple vendors across the ecosystems. They're like, well, how do I generate the availability report from those SBOMs? So today I'll show you a quick demo in 5 minutes. So again, we have data intelligence from the first party data from the maintainers directly. What that means is that we partner with them and we ask them questions and they give us intelligence on those projects. And also we provide that data available to the needs of our platform that we have, and which is basically a web platform that gives you an overview like this. Or we have Log4j, for example, we partner with Apache and we partner with the Log4j maintainer to be a contract with us to help them secure this project based on Linux foundations. So the scorecard and the NIST SSDF requirements. So again, we have a quality check, but what the key factor is, if I have an SBOM, how do I know what the quality of that SBOM is? So here's some SBOMs that I've looked at. I'm looking at a lot of SBOMs the last year and a half. And so, when you look at a project like Elasticsearch, for example, this SBOM is so big, it has 80,000 plus lines of code. So how can you analyze this with a human eye? You can't. It has to be driven through a machine, right? And we integrate into the pipeline, per se. And we're able to use our CMI to rapidly produce an output to generate the report. So I'm running it right now. And as you'll see here in a second, the output is this file here, an Elastic CVE report. So I can look at this report in seconds and see, okay, I do have the data here. Here's what I've discovered within this SBOM. I have various CVEs, right? This took like 5 seconds to produce. Reading an SBOM of that size is quite expensive for a human to do. So machines do it better. So what I can show you here is what's unique about Tidelift, because we partner with the maintainers. We have first-party data that helps you with the CV justification. Right? Justin earlier from Cisco was talking about VEX. How can we determine the status of the CV? That's what they do. We can ask them questions directly and say, what's the current status of the CVE that's in your code? And they actually provide that data to us through the means of the platform that we created. What's more important is they actually get paid from us because they are doing volunteer work, but also getting paid from us now to address that security issue in the supply chain. At a high level, we can look at any SBOM and we can give you that sort of standard report and look at Cybeats, XPDX, for example. We do meet that. This is our ecosystem that we support. The application layer, we do integrate with any CI/CD pipeline, and we can automate this at scale. And we are doing that for the DoD right now. They are concerned about supply chain, and they want to be able to address that systematically, right? Not to the human element. I'll pause there. We still more than happy to have our conversations about this long term, but that's what we do at a high level.
Thank you, Ricardo. Next up is Anchore. Sean.
Happy to be here and share the stage with everybody else talking about SBOMs. So my name is Fazenbaker. I'm a solutions engineer with Anchore, and we are a software supply chain security company. specifically for containers. So as with everybody else, I've got about 5 minutes to talk to you today. So I'll try to cover about 5 different things. The first one is, who is Anchore? We're, again, a cybersecurity startup founded in 2016 by Cybeats and Dan Murray, former founders of Ansible and Eucalyptus. Ton of PubSec customers, probably most known for our involvement in Platform One. Every image in the Iron Bank container registry has been scanned by Anchore. So much like everybody else up here today, the problem that we're trying to solve is the increasing software complexity. With the ease of software development and software integration and deployment comes more complexity, more areas where direct and transitive dependencies can be introduced, and more unknowns with what actually comprises the software that companies are using in production. So we look to solve that, starting with a framework we call the Viper framework. The first one's visibility, right? Generating SBOMs for containers, uncovering the data and metadata to make up your software applications. The second one is using that SBOM to do your inspection. We'll inspect for vulnerabilities. We'll inspect for malware, misconfigurations, secret exposures, etc. Third one's policy enforcement. So policy to us is a user-defined set of rules that can be applied to your container image to then gate and determine whether you want to promote that image to a higher environment or whether or not you're in compliance. And again, those are all user-defined. And then the last is their remediation and reporting, using the tool to put together maybe your POAM and then report on vulnerabilities and other discoveries within your SBOM. So where could Anchore help? Obviously, SBOMs, container scanning, integrating with all the popular container registries, integration into CI pipelines. So once you build your images, we can then call Anchore, run that scan. Got a couple down there around federal compliance. We do a lot with that policy engine that I mentioned that I can maybe show you here briefly as well. Around, uncovering compliance for NIST 853 controls, for example, and some other things. Briefly, we do have a couple of open source products, SIFT, which is our SBOM generation tool for container images, Bright, which takes an SBOM in and runs a vulnerability scan, and we have another one called Grant that was released a month ago, I believe. It's a license compliance tool. I won't touch on the bottom line up front that I included in the deck here, but I will show you a brief view of what this actually looks like. So I've got a container image here. We have our SBOM, right? So thinking about that visibility piece, separate out the OS and application layers. We can then use that SBOM to uncover vulnerabilities, which we see here. And then in a different, respect, taking into account vulnerabilities, but other compliance-related issues, access controls, for example, right? We can say, I'm applying my FedRAMP policy here. These are all of the issues found. We actually can't promote this image. We need to fix these issues. We can see what those issues are here. So that's Anchore. That's a brief view of the tool, and I'll be done in that minute. Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could stop sharing. Cybeats is up next.
So hi everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Dmitry Raidman and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cybeats. Cybeats is a SBOM management company. We are a considered to be a pure play in the market. And what we do is consumption and ingestion of SBOMs with enrichment of very powerful data from our own data source, data lake, and also monitoring and alerting on top of that SBOMs, right? So we can analyze the vulnerabilities and we also keeping up and we continuously monitoring everything, keeping our customers ahead of the curve. I'm going to show less demos of product of ours, right? I really want to take some angle here of how we can operationalize further SBOMs and VEXs in our day-to-day to reduce our actual risks, right? So what I want to bring here is that I'm also very involved in all the aviation space. I'm going back to Israel. I served in the Air Force and being in the Air Force Academy. So I'll take an angle of kind of explaining, hey, how, for example, a pilot avoids risks and attacks, and how it's kind of adjusting to what we are going to do is vulnerabilities. So CVE, indication of active exploitation. That's kind of something that's I made up, but it's interesting terminology, right? This picture is really unrealistic. It's never can happen like that, right? The pilot of this F-16 will never be chased by a missile because he's going to get a warning from what's so-called RWR system that he has like a little scope that shows him basically where the missile or whose radar actually illuminating him while he's flying based on the sensors that's surrounding the aircraft. So he will not let the missile to get so close, right? So it's really an unrealistic picture, and this is my kind of fruits of playing this journey in AI. But you're maybe familiar with this CV, right? Anyone familiar? What is this CV?
Last weekend, right?
Exactly. That's the exact, the famous exact, right? So that's the RWR system, right? Like it's a little scope in the center. That's the aircraft, and then all the warnings coming around. And let's see how we can adopt this type of approach. Someone mentioned here even OODA loops yesterday, which is really used a lot in this context. How we can really come up with vulnerability early warning life cycle and early warnings that we can get then can respond to that, right? So let's imagine that I'm an IT organization or I may be a vendor of devices, and there is such a vulnerability like XZ, right? So there is out there all kinds of sensors which usually starting at a honeypot level that's collecting attacks, right? So they see payloads of exploits running through them, and they have the knowledge they can map these payloads to vulnerabilities. Now, this data is being collected, it's transferred over taxi with sticks, right? Companies like Cyber, with Stick, they have this type of information, and once this information flows, now if I'm using SBOMs and I'm using VEXs, and I also understand what is indication of active exploitation, I can actually query all my SBOMs and say, hey, who's affected by this specific CVE, right? It doesn't really, don't need to know how the XZ go. You don't want to know which package it is on your Ubuntu Linux. You just want to say, hey, this is the vulnerability. Give me immediate answer. Under around 1 second, I can tolerate. Whereas which products, which software that I installed on my servers are affected. And then, of course, once it's done, we can actually continue. We can deploy different type of playbooks to operationalize and automate our response mitigation. By the way, oops, I'm not sure. So I'm sure that again, many of us have this problem, right? I would love to see someone raising their hands who doesn't have that in the organization, right? 20,000 vulnerabilities which we cannot basically understand where they are, but really we need something to find that specific affected systems by the vulnerability. And here it is. So that's the demo time. Now I'm going to show you how it's done. I'm going to show it in the boring way and the fun way in the UI. Well, it's not boring. It's more exciting for me. 1 minute. Thank you, Duncan. So here I am, right? So I'm calling an API of Cybeats that actually manages all these SBOMs and access and all the information. And I'm going to make this call. So it came back, well, it took 2 seconds in this case, but it gives us all the information about specific vulnerability, right? That I send in the body of the query. I just send it the vulnerability, and then what I got back is also which departments, which business units are affected, and also which applications with complete version, right? With complete information of purpose, etc., are affected by these specific CVs, right? So I can see all the packages that are affected by the CV, and I can see the application from another tenant of mine.
30 seconds.
And just to give you some visibility how something like this will look in the UI, I'm going to take this vulnerability and I'm going to the Cybeats system and I'm going to make the search. And that JSON that you have seen now shown nicely in the UI, it tells you which departments, which business units are affected, right? So you can see here, there is a product, pet feeder, version 1, it's a device, it's affected by this vulnerability, right? I have all the details, what's the application that's running on this product, and of course, what's the library that's causing this product to be exploitable and vulnerable. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry. You can then stop sharing. We do have, we did allow 7 minutes for questions and answers. I could have actually all of the different speakers from this session come up. Obviously, the online ones are already there online. And then we can ask. Guys across the front. So does anyone in the room have any questions for any specific one or any generic questions for anybody?
Thank you, Duncan. This is Macaroni AT&T. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. I have a quick anecdotal humorous comment. So for Brett and Jason, all the guys that were arguing case on over XML, can you imagine if all those slides had XML on them? For the last 2 days, it's like how we would be overwhelmed. Now, having said that, this is really great what you folks have done. Cautionary tale for both the producers and us consumers and users. Our nation state adversaries, who I watch come in our network and map our infrastructure and find our vulnerability, if they find this stuff, we are just force multiply their ability to do stuff in our network. So my time goes.
I'll disagree violently. They already have the info, so we don't have it. This is a roadmap to the defender, not a roadmap to the attacker. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Justin kind of touched on this a little bit with security.txt and like, okay, here's where we publish our CSAT, right? But like, so one of the questions I have is, you know, as a vendor providing SBOMs, having to have dealt with Log4j and Log4Shell on the other side of the coin, like thousands of customers say, hey, when did you update? When did you update? Multiple it makes me think that there's a need for a pushing capability, a standard API mechanism where people can not just publish their SBOMs, but actively push them to their customers, right? And I'm wondering if there's any kind of a thought around that, like using some type of pub/sub protocol, blockchain, who knows?
Seems like lots of us have responses.
Who wants it?
Yeah, I imagine you'll hear similar things from folks across the whole like lineup here. The short answer is yes. I mean, I'll speak for what Manifest does. You know, we're a solution, and I know there are others who think that it's on both sides of that transaction, right? So we actually today have transactions where both a vendor, a software supplier has Manifest, as well as their downstream consumer. And so those SBOMs can be published directly via API from the software supplier into the tenant of the software consumer, and then that gets scanned and automated. I'll save some other things. There's also been conversation around there's some companies that publish their SBOMs and VEX documents publicly, and that's an interesting decision that has to go through legal and risk. There are conversations around whether to be a global repository of public SBOMs, and you get to a lot of people have very strong opinions about that. In our experience, most SBOMs are still locked down by NDA and legal teams. And so kind of the direct point to point is, but right now we're seeing more just on kind of how do you make this easy, whether it's pub/sub, Kafka, API, etc., but trying to make it direct and secure.
So, I know Ricardo and I have volunteered on the system, and we had an SBOM sharing group, which is about to be published, so you'll see a number of use cases from a number of industries. This gentleman from Anchore said, there's multiple ways to do it. It's not just technical, it's mostly legal. And, you know, that's the challenge, right? This is new, machine to machine is new. And most of the providers and suppliers are trying to work out.
And checking on Daniel's example of if two of his customers both have manifests that can talk to each other, in Jason's point he's getting at if one customer is Dmitry's and one customer is Daniel's, can they talk to each other?
We can technically do that too. I know it's not a better pitch, but I'll say one other thing is philosophically, not just the manifest thing. Again, the reason why all this stuff is made to be machine readable is so we can automate the generation and distribution of it. So I imagine like many of us here imagine a world where like, let's talk about VEX, right? Right now, if I want VEX for my Cisco routers, my Schneider or whatever, I still have to go to a web page and like download this stuff manually. How do we get to a place where I somehow subscribe that like, hey, Schneider has validated that I am a Schneider customer, I'm a Siemens customer, when they publish their VEX documents for the log 5J, as my co-founder likes to joke, how does that automatically get pushed to me and my phone scanners? So they quiets down the vulnerabilities that, they've already triaged away so they're not impacted, or they've escalated the ones that are. Right? If we are just if we're posting machine readable documents on web pages, we kind of undermine the ability of machine readability to its fullest potential.
Harlan from CISA. I don't participate in the SBOM working group, so this is a question I have. But for those that are also in the SBOM working group, it may come out in that sharing document you're talking about, but also for those that are not, I'm interested in hearing a lot about quality being an issue. And even Jason was talking about validator capability. What are some of the things that you think would help improve the quality from all the SBOMs that you're using and have access to?
I'll start with that response. You know, like I mentioned earlier, Tidelift has indexed every open source project in the world. And so creating the quality data is a key factor. Because when you look at the NTIA individual element requirements for the SBOM, it's only meeting the second layer. How do you do the transitive dependencies for a dependency at scale, right? So that comes in identifying all the different factors that are introduced in the code base systematically. And so we can generate that now, right? Because you have to have the data. If you don't have the data, you don't have the intelligence to be able to produce a quality SBOM. And so once you have the quality checkpoint, we have the open SSF scorecard requirements in the Linux Foundation that are driving those security best practices. So we're actually checking that systematically at scale. And we're working with the maintainers to be able to address those mandates, right? We want the industry to be involved. And obviously the way we incentivize the maintainers is by paying them monthly paychecks. So they don't have to volunteer anymore. Because the volunteers, they do it when they can, right? Where you pay them monthly paychecks to have a way to monetize their earnings and perhaps prioritize their issues on the projects they're maintaining. So that's one of the things that we're doing to address the quality check.
Dmitry, Dmitry, and then we'll finish up at the left. Right.
So I want to say something about quality. When it comes to quality in SBOMs, less is more, but this less should be very precise and accurate, right? For example, don't try to fill up all the possible things. Just try to identify precisely the software component, the package manager where it comes from, and its version. These three magic items can now be used to resolve and enrich data from many sources, right, based on different tool capabilities. But if you have this right, and you also classified properly the software components, you're not calling an application or container a file, that's another thing, right? So proper classification of components and also precise and accurate data about the software package, right? Package type, version. That would be amazing if we could see that in the code industry.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone. A round of applause. We'll be breaking for lunch, and we will reconvene at what time? Somebody looking at the schedule tells me
1:15.
1:15. We reconvene at 1:15. Thank you all.